For million years ago, the earth was a different place. Thick woodlands sprawled into open savannas, broken by rivers teeming with crocodiles and shaded by trees that bore fruit only during short windows of time. There were no cities, no languages, no fires crackling in the dark. Yet somewhere between the forests of what is now East Africa and the wind-swept grasslands, a group of beings huddled close together under the rising sun. They weren't quite human, not yet, but in their eyes flickered the first traces of what we would come to call love, loyalty, and care. These early ancestors, Australopithecus Anamensis, were tiny by today's standards, with long arms, curved fingers, and brains not much larger than those of chimpanzees. But their hearts and, perhaps more importantly, their instincts for social survival were already pointing toward a destiny far greater than mere animal existence. And in the stillness of prehistory, their compassion echoed louder than the roar of any predator. Imagine the scene: a juvenile, no more than 3 feet tall, stumbles while climbing across a gnarled root, twisting an ankle. In the unforgiving rhythm of nature, injury usually meant death. But instead of abandonment, the others slow down. One adult pauses to groom the young one gently, removing thorns with practiced ease. Another stays behind, helping the juvenile limp toward the safety of shade. This moment, though fleeting, marks something incredible. They are not acting for survival alone. They are beginning to care, to help without immediate reward. And from this behavior springs a revolution not made of fire or tools, but of empathy. Across generations, these early hominins began organizing themselves, not just as mating pairs or competitive rivals, but as groups bonded by emotional understanding. When food was found, perhaps a patch of ripe figs, or an insect-riddled log offering a burst of protein-rich termite was not hoarded by the strongest. It was often shared. Not always equally, but deliberately. Mothers handed pieces to older children. Adults nudged the weak toward the center. Even in a world where calories were precious, the instinct to give trumped the instinct to take. These decisions were not mathematical, they were felt. That feeling, that invisible web of connection, started weaving the story of us. In those early days, survival meant knowing how to read the world, listening for rustles in the grass that could mean a stalking cat, watching the skies for the shadow of an eagle, learning when the rains would return or where the baobab trees were blooming. But equally important was reading each other. A whimper from a child alerted the group, a grunt from a scout froze movement. These vocal cues weren't language yet, but they were rich in meaning, and at the heart of that meaning was a shared emotional landscape. Fear, relief, excitement, they were all contagious, and in their contagion, the bonds between them grew stronger. At night, when darkness swallowed the plains, the group would curl together. Body heat warded off the chill, but warmth was only part of it. They sought the presence of others. There was comfort in closeness, reassurance in touch. Grooming wasn't just hygienic, it was healing. When one groomed another, stress levels dropped, blood pressure lowered, trust increased. These weren't random behaviors, they were the ancient blueprints of care. And from care came survival. Somewhere in that long march of time, tools began to appear, not the sleek stone axes of later humans, but the first crude attempts. A stick used to dig for roots, a stone used to crack a tough shell. Even these tools were often shared. One would find a stick that worked well, and others would watch and imitate. Tool use wasn't taught the way we teach now, with words and explanations, but it was passed down through attention, observation, and patience. And that patience, too, was care. It took effort to tolerate the young fumbling with tools. It took time to allow them to learn, but they did it. And so, the knowledge spread, not just the knowledge of things, but the knowledge of how to nurture others. Even death, that unrelenting force of the wild, began to carry weight. When a member of the group died, the others didn't always just move on. Sometimes, they lingered. They stayed near the body, touching it, sniffing it, sitting in silence. What was happening in their minds, we can only guess. But the behavior speaks to a shift, a recognition of loss, and perhaps the early sparks of morning. This wasn't instinct alone, it was feeling. And in feeling, they were becoming something new. Over time, the groups grew more structured. Males didn't always dominate with violence. Females often formed tight circles of support, helping each other care for young, watching over one another during vulnerable moments. Older individuals, though slower, held valuable knowledge of food routes, of shelter, of danger, and so they were respected, not discarded. Children learned by watching, by being guided. Injured members weren't immediately left behind. In fact, fossil evidence shows signs of healing fractures that had time to mend, suggesting the injured were cared for long enough to recover. These acts may seem small now, but in the brutal context of prehistory, they were revolutionary. Fast forward through the millennia, and the echoes of those early bonds remain in us. When we cradle a newborn, it's not a new instinct. When we sit beside a sick friend or offer help to a stranger, we're acting on a legacy carved into our DNA for million years ago. Those first hominins didn't know the future. They didn't know they were laying the foundation for humanity. But in the way they treated one another, they shaped a future where community would become our greatest strength. The environment around them was unforgiving. Droughts scorched the land. Predators prowled constantly, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, and lurking crocodiles in the river banks. Disease could spread through the group without warning. Injuries from falls or hunts could be fatal. And yet, within this chaos, the glue of care held them together. It was this togetherness that allowed them to adapt, to migrate, to push beyond their limitations. Every act of support was a stone in the road towards civilization. We often picture early humans as solitary or brutish, but this could not be further from the truth. The truth is they were deeply connected, not through language or religion or law, but through something even older, emotion. When one fell, the others lifted. When one cried, others listened. When one succeeded, others celebrated. These were not just social behaviors. They were evolutionary sparks. And in those sparks, we can see the beginnings of love, friendship, and belonging. So next time you feel drawn to help someone without expecting anything in return, remember, it's not just kindness, it's legacy. It's a whisper from ancestors long gone, telling you that in a world full of danger, the safest place has always been with each other. When we huddle close, when we reach out, when we forgive and protect, we are honoring the memory of those tiny, upright walkers on the African plains who first dared to care. Their story is not written in books. It's carved in fossilized footprints, in bones showing healed fractures, in wear patterns on primitive tools. But more than anything, it's written in us. In the way we lean into each other when we're scared. In the way we grieve when someone is lost. In the way we look for comfort in the arms of another. They gave us that gift not with words, but with actions. Not through domination, but through devotion. For a million years ago, beneath the summit trees and the whispering grasses, a new kind of strength was born. It wasn't the strength of muscle or tooth or claw. It was the strength of care, of choosing not to walk alone, of lifting up the fallen. And in that choice, Australopithecus Anamensis didn't just survive, they thrived. And in doing so, they lit the first flame of humanity not with fire, but with love.